Thank you all for joining us for tonight's webinar, Digital Wellbeing in a Digital Era. I'm Greg Berry, Assistant Director in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Just a quick note, since we're virtual, don't be surprised if things may seem out of place or a technical issue pops up. And tonight in Birmingham area, we are dealing with some severe weather rolling through. So if something does hiccup, please bear with us. If you do experience any issues with your video or audio, please click the reconnect button at the top of your screen. This will get you back to the webinar right away. Tonight's webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded onto our website tomorrow. If you have any questions throughout the evening, I'll be monitoring that. Please place them in the chat room and we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. At this time, I would like to introduce tonight's guests. First is Emma Lembke. Emma is a Birmingham native and co-founder of the Logoff movement, which is dedicated to rethinking social media use by teens for teens. Currently, she works for Technically Politics, a youth lobbying campaign dedicated to pushing for big tech regulation, a platform co-founded with tonight's other guest. As mentioned, Aliza Kopans co-founded Technically Politics. The movement works to include youth voices in political discussions around tech regulations. She's reached thousands of people through written publications, webinars, podcasts, and community involvement. So at this time, ladies, welcome to the webinar, and the platform is yours. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. Like stated, my name is Emma Lembke, and Aliza and I are incredibly grateful and excited to be talking with you lovely folks from UAB today about digital well-being in the digital area, specifically looking at how each listener today can really build their own toolbox equipped with the resources, the strategies, and the mentalities necessary to live with tech in the healthiest way within our current situation. So the presentation will last around 30 minutes to 40 minutes, and sprinkled within the presentation, we are going to have some live questions included. So please, when that does come up, we would love for you to type your answers in the Q&A. And then also we will have a Q&A at the end of the session, so please feel free to put your questions in there and we will address them later. So again, one thing that we really do want to reiterate is that we are very active in the digital well-being space. We've been advocates, both of us, for about 2 years, but we do not consider ourselves experts in the field. We are only experts on our own stories. So all of the things that we really will be discussing today are suggestions that we have seen in practice work, and that we would love to share with you so that you can incorporate it in your toolbox and that you can kind of use that to tailor your own experiences. So largely, you know, we were introduced already, but my name is Emma Lembke, a native of Birmingham, and I was connected through a Center for Humane Technology meetup with my lovely co-founder, Aliza.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aliza Kopans. So excited and honored to be here tonight with you all. We are going to take you through first a little bit of an introduction to the problem in our digital world and how Emma and I have approached it through both a personal, interpersonal, and then advocacy lens, and how you all can embody some of these strategies. And hopefully this webinar will provide a launching pad for you to think more critically about your relationship with the digital world and ways that you want to see it improve. So first, we're setting the stage with the problem.
So let's jump straight into this. So as I stated, you know, my name is Emma Lembke, and I'm from Birmingham, and I know a lot about UAB, so I understand how important, you know, studies and academic research is in building issues and in building solutions. So in order to really acclimate you to the problem that we're trying to really fix and remedy, we're going to briefly present 3 findings and studies. First, looking at the Pew Research study, looking at social media usage in 2021. So we won't have enough time to cover all of these in depth, but we highly, highly suggest looking at the entirety of these researches and these studies, and it will be linked in a resource guide that we will send out after this presentation. So this study specifically has 3 major takeaways. So first of all, it found after studying a large pool of participants and adults that age groups really do prefer different social media platforms. Specifically, adults tend to lean towards Facebook and YouTube as their social media of choice, while younger adults will go into later, and millennials lean towards Instagram and have a stronger preference towards those platforms. Additionally, we see that there's a breakdown of social media usage based on different demographics, such as gender, ethnicity, age, earning, education level, geographic location, and that's the third kind of the third graph. And again, it really is just showing that there's this general trend towards Facebook and YouTube. But again, across the spectrum, there are so many different social media apps that are engaged with today. And then lastly, what we see is that a lot of those that engage with these largely popular social media apps, the majority of the participants are spending at least time daily or several times daily on these apps within these online platforms, really illuminating the role that these apps play in our everyday life.
And moving on to more of a niche focus within social media use, we're taking it to the workplace in a research study from Pew Center. And so these study findings, 3 of the main takeaways are about the percentage of workers who indicate that they ever use social media while on the job in order to either take a mental break from work, connect with friends and family at work, or get information that helps solve work-related problems. And as we can see, there are 2 different demographics relayed here. One whose workplace has sort of a code around technology use and digital device use in the workplace, and others who do not. And then the percentage of workers in each age group who have discovered information on social media that improved or that lowered their opinions of a colleague. And I find this particular set of data to be very interesting, as we see that for the most part, aside from the 50 to 64-year-old age bracket, more people have found information on social media that actually lowered their perception of a colleague than benefited and enhanced it. And then lastly, looking at the percentage of full or part-time workers who use the internet to do work-related tasks in a typical day. And we see that 37% of workers frequently use the internet. And especially in this era, during COVID, a lot of us are a lot more confined to our devices for working, for earning an income, for studying, and thinking about how this has shifted our relationships with technology and whether that's moving us in more of a positive or a negative direction.
And then the last study we really want to present in depth is the 2022 Mayo Clinic summary of the impact that social media has on teens today. So the summary really breaks down the possible benefits and the possible harms of social media, really emphasizing the multifaceted nature of these online platforms. And they identify as some of these possible benefits to be the creation of accessible online communities and forums, additional forms of communication, space to build social networks and provide support to those struggling in the real world. Additionally, it is a source of entertainment for teens, a source of self-expression. And lastly, social media can be this tool for the really rapid and unprecedented dissemination of information. But also looking at the flip side of that, the Mayo Clinic dives into the possible harms. They are quoted saying social media is distracting them, disrupting their sleep, and exposing them, teens, to bullying, rumor spreading, unrealistic views of other people's lives, and peer pressure. So these studies really illuminate the harms that social media can cause teens. And they discuss 2 2019 studies, one in the United States, one in England, that found that US teen participants specifically who spend more than 3 hours a day interacting with social media were at heightened risk of mental health problems. And then the 2016 study found that more than 450 teens found that greater social media use, nighttime media use, and emotional dependency and investment in social media, they were linked to a worse sleep quality and overall an increase in levels of anxiety and depression recorded. So many of these studies were discussed within the summary, further illuminate the scientific research that alludes to the correlation between the decreased user well-being and increased usage and dependence on social media. And that is kind of what we based a lot of our advocacy work based off of when we found these studies and these statistics. And that's just kind of the user breakdown.
And so moving into the first section of how you all can embody digital wellness and seek to improve your relationships with the digital world, we're looking at personal strategies. And so if you have a moment and are willing to drop into the chat one way you want to see your relationships with screens change to get you to start thinking a little bit critically about your relationship with technology. And there's a couple second delay between our speaking time and what you all are receiving. So we'll wait about 20 to 30 seconds and hopefully get a few of those answers in the chat and be able to share them out loud and build a community around our shared struggles.
And as we wait, Aliza, go ahead and say exactly what you're looking for again so they can populate that as they are catching up in the virtual world.
Absolutely. One way that you want to see your relationship with your screens change. And so your own personal usage of screens, when you use them, where you use them, how you use them. And if you can think of an area in particular that you struggle with or that you feel like is taking more of a negative toll on yourself, and how you would like that to change. And I know for myself, a big thing is when I'm sitting in a 200-person lecture hall to not be doing other homework on my computer. And it's so easy to do that when you're not really held accountable by the professor, where there are hundreds of kids just sitting in rows. So that's something that I've been struggling with in the transition to college, and I'm really working on being more intentional about keeping my laptop away or just open to the tab I need as is pertinent to the class.
Mm-hmm. And I feel the exact same way. College, and again, we'll talk about this later on in life, each stage of life and each stage of kind of impersonal experiences will bring about new challenges related to social media. So for me, it's the same thing with college, not feeling that peer pressure to consistently be interacting with and connecting with other teens that wash you around me via Snapchat and Instagram.
And we encourage you to continue thinking about and hopefully answering these questions in the chat if you feel comfortable. And we're going to continue on now just for the sake of time, but we'll have further opportunities for audience engagement.
So zooming out, Aliza and I just really want to emphasize the universality of the struggle to balance maintaining well-being and remaining within these online platforms. As we showed you earlier within the research that we found in the studies and summaries that were populated, no matter what stage you are at life, social media can really pose as this tremendous tool and a tremendous burden capable of harm. So we want to acknowledge and affirm all individuals' struggles with screens and social media usage. And while we may not be able to provide specific resources and remedies for each of you to face each one of these issues, we hope that some of the tools and the tricks that we will discuss in this presentation will allow you to have that basic framework to really tailor your screen time habits and to promote the best possible experience for you. And I think what Aliza is going to go into next is an extremely important first step in understanding how to build those healthier habits.
So let's take a dive into the definition between active and passive use. And before I explore what this means for me, I would love for all of you to pop into the chat or just think about it amongst yourselves if you have any ideas of what might be active or passive uses of digital technology. And I'll say my background to this is when I entered the digital wellness space around 2 years ago, I had it in my head that all forms of technology were bad. And then if you were on a screen, that was most likely a negative experience. And this differentiation between active and passive screen use really shifted the way that I approach my relationships and then my conversations with other people regarding screen time. And so to dive in a little bit more into the difference between active and passive screen use. Active screen use is when you are engaging with other people around screens, or when you're learning something from screens, or when you're watching a movie. One of my favorite examples is you watch a movie with your family and you're laughing during it, you pause and take an ice cream break, and then at the dinner table the next night, you talk about the movie and the character developments and whether you thought this character made a good choice or if you liked the ending. And this movie, this piece of digital media, is sparking conversations and human connections and critical thinking. And if kids are on a screen reading a book and then they go talk to their parents about the book and the parents seek to actively engage their younger child in what did you learn about? And can you tell me a little bit about your story? And so this idea that screens and the benefits of screens can extend beyond that actual physical device itself. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about technology is when it's allowing us to connect with other people on a human level. And especially in this era and with the amazing globalization of today, sometimes we can't be physically in person. And so if a 2-year-old is FaceTiming their grandparent on the screen, that's another form of active use. And it's really facilitating this human connection that's beyond just doom scrolling on Instagram or liking people's Facebook posts.
And if you have a pen and paper or an open tab on your computer, I suggest you look up these resources. And what we're going to do, you might see a little wrench or toolbar in the corner. That is kind of indicating to you, and when we send out these slides, that this is a resource that you can interact with that we really think is going to be helpful in facilitating better connections and healthier habits online. Yep, there it is. So two things that I really want to turn you towards is one, the Stanford Habit Tracker, and two, the Stanford Screen Time Genie. There are specific courses and graduate programs at Stanford that work to develop healthier relationships with technology that have been extremely helpful in producing these resources. And specifically with the Screen Time Genie, what it will do is you will go through, type in what you need the most help with, whether that be distraction-free spaces, whether that be personal kind of doom scrolls. If you want to have a better relationship with your family, you can customize that. And then from there, it will produce customized recommendations to you on how you can create better screen time habits. And same with the Screen Time Habit Tracker. It's an extension you can add on your computer to best be able to kind of facilitate those interactions with social media. It will put more levels of friction between you and addictive technologies, such as I do the habit tracker, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world, but I have it to where every time I try to go on Twitter, it buffers for about 5 seconds and I can't get on. And 9 times out of 10, I close my computer and I'm like, I'm done with this. I don't have the time. But it's little things like that that really will turn you away from apps unless you truly need it. So those are two really helpful resources. And if anyone at the end of this presentation, if we have more time, wants me to walk through Screen Time Genie or the other software application, let me know in the chat and I can put that in our docket.
And just to interject quickly here, I know we said in the beginning, but I want to reiterate, this is absolutely not a comprehensive presentation. And so Emma and I are just referring to some of our learning moments and to some of the helpful techniques we have found, but there are so many resources out there, and we'll send out a follow-up doc with additional links to organizations and programs that can help foster digital wellness in other manners.
Exactly. And then we also are incredibly willing and able. In the end, we have our emails to help specifically give resources to each individual at this webinar, because again, the digital well-being space is so plentiful and there are so many wonderful things that you can engage with. And this is just one of my favorites. So going next into part 2 of our presentation, we really want to hit on personal and interpersonal strategies, because a crucial way to promote your own well-being and develop better, healthier habits with technology and social media is through building interpersonal strategies and networks of accountability. So Aliza is going to go into one such interpersonal strategic resource that is my favorite and is created by her.
So this is one of my favorite things to talk about. 2 years ago, I co-created a resource called Dear Parents, which is a digital wellness guide from young people to their parents. And at the time, I was an intern with the wonderful Children's Screen Time Action Network at Fair Play, which we will link to later. And my mentors and myself and my co-creator were talking about how we feel like there's such a deficit of young people going directly to their parents, talking about their experiences with technology and ways they want support and ways they want to see their interactions with the digital realm change. And parents are looking to experts and books and educators and practitioners, and not to the kids who are living through the problem themselves. And so I helped create this resource to parents, sharing the perspective of young people, answering some questions of parents, and then also providing concrete resources. And so, as I said, we included teen testimonials and advice from a worldwide survey and compiled those into our resource. Some top tech tips for ways for parents to integrate digital well-being into family life, and then the interactive pre and post conversation guides, which I'm going to go a little bit more in depth to now. We unfortunately don't have time for me to run through the whole resource, but we will link that afterwards, and I highly encourage you all to check it out. It's the Action Network's most downloaded resource and has received really positive, heartwarming, empowering results. So the Dear Parents Conversation Guide uses acronyms that my co-creator Selena and I came up with to listen with care, so curiosity, an open mind, respect, and empathy. And so we created this outline around conversations about your young people's experiences with technology, but have found that it can apply to so much more. Any topic that might feel like it's high tension, whether it's between you and your kid or a colleague, or if you are a student on this webinar, between you and friends or you moving to parents. And this idea that when you're entering a conversation where you have a little bit of fear about how it's going to go, or people hold different views, or maybe just a lack of understanding about where the other person is coming from, to embody these senses of curiosity, open mind, respect, empathy, and that I'm here first and foremost to listen, because listening is the best gateway into understanding where the other person is coming from. And then from there, we can reach a compromise, or at least start a dialogue that's going to continue and better both of our relationships with technology and with each other, which is especially crucial in a parent-teen relationship. And then we have a response outline to respond with love. So lots of questions, again, that same strain of curiosity. And of course, everyone is entitled to their own opinions, but when you're in a conversation with someone who holds a different view, how can you instead try and step into their shoes and understand their perspective a little bit more? And I've done this on a few webinars before. My mom is fluent in sign language, and so I grew up using this sign. And if you all at home want to practice this, hold up a 1 with one finger and a 2 with the other finger. And then take this 2 and point it to the 1. And what this is, your one finger, is a stimuli. So this can be an idea, an object, another person, a belief. And then these 2 fingers is a pair of eyes. And so you move this pair of eyes around the stimuli, and it's representing different perspectives and coming at the same thing from different angles. And so in conversations such as those around technology, how can we as young people and then our parents work to embody this idea of perspective taking? And okay, I'm holding my views, and I'm really going to work to step outside of my comfort zone and into the shoes of my young person. Optimism as well. I think it's really easy, as we've seen such profound negative effects of technology on especially the younger generation, to fall down this rabbit hole of it's all bad and you need no phone. And in order for you to have a healthy relationship, there needs to be no relationship at all. And so instead, as a parent, trying to cultivate the sense of, okay, we'll work through this together. If you're in a moment of struggle with your devices, we're going to talk it through and seek extra help if we need. And I believe in you, and I believe in the power of our conversations here. And then this validation of, I might not understand what you're going through because I didn't grow up with technology myself, but that makes sense, or I hear you. And so words that really reinforce that the space that you're creating for you and your young person to have a more difficult conversation, you're really striving to validate what they're going through, even if you don't have a full sense of what that may be. And then this engagement that it should go without saying, I think, but that your phone is away during this period, and that you're modeling how you want your young person to be. And this also integrates into our top tech tips, and that as parents, you have a lot of power in the home environment to sort of set a standard for how you and your children and partners interact with devices. And of course, as young people, many of us don't have jobs yet, and our online time is mostly for homework and for communicating with friends. And so as a parent, if you need to be on your computer or your phone to send out a work email, to communicate that and say, the reason I am on my device is because. And then when you're at the dinner table, you put those phones away and you set the standard for your whole family. And I think it paves a really wonderful road for these kinds of conversations, and helps young people feel like their parents are coming to them with this genuine desire to understand our perspective and to help us, instead of the hypocrisy that I think often arises when young people feel like their parents aren't working to understand and are on their devices just as much, it seems, as the young people are themselves. And so we have an interactive worksheet that you can, or this is a printable version of it, that helps you think through your conversation and the goals you want to get out of it, strategies you're going to try. And studies prove that this intentional time before entering a conversation that may be a little bit of high tensions is really beneficial in staying on track with the goals you want to get out of it, both emotional and tangible ones, and making sure that you maintain a sense of diplomacy and respect throughout all of it, so that you open doors for more conversations of this sort, because conversations with your young person around technology is not just a one-time thing. Our relationships with screens are constantly evolving, and thus so should the conversations that are paired with that and that are working to guide us down a path of healthful use of digital screens. And then, of course, this post-conversation reflection, where you can think a little bit more critically about how the conversation went, and then write down steps so that next time you can revisit this worksheet and think about ways that you can adjust your approach to this conversation to have it be more effective and more kind. And if you all have a moment and want to write into the chat, what areas do you think you could / you will work to apply the Dear Parents Conversation Guide? And as I said earlier, this extends way beyond just the niche area of conversations of technology around young people and parents. And my mentor, Jean Rogers from Action Network, who oversaw the creation of this resource, she has told us time and time again that parents are using it in professional settings and are going to colleagues with work problems. And instead of, I think Emma and I both feel this, that a lot of times we are not taught how to engage in difficult conversations. And so Dear Parents definitely doesn't cover every strategy in dealing with these conversations, but I think it can provide a really good foundation. And so if you're able to practice it within the home and then carrying it to workplaces or to other situations with a little bit more comfort. And then, one second, sorry, dealing with this new infrastructure. And then this is my favorite part of the Dear Parents resource. We have a companion goal on a wonderful platform called Tripod, which is a goal setting company. And you can create a free account and have access to this Dear Parents goal. And the goal on Tripod really embodies the sense of collaboration that it's at the heart of Dear Parents, and that we can't create solutions to how to healthfully engage with screens if it's not a collaborative process. And parents can't just instate these rules without having kids in the dialogue around it, because the way we interface and the values we get from technology are different across generations, across individuals. And so parents are able to create this goal and then add their young people as goal buddies to it. And so together you're working on prepping for conversations, reflecting on conversations, and then sort of charting the journey to a more healthful place with technology within the family.
Yes, and I won't talk too long on this, but largely, another cool resource to help facilitate these interpersonal strategies and communication networks is through Logoff. So Logoff acts as one of those resources within the movement. This was a movement that I was lucky enough to found and create while at the Altamont School, which I'm usually not able to say the Altamont School, but since this is a Birmingham webinar, which is awesome, that's a school up in kind of the Mountain Brook Forest Park area. They allowed me to kind of work to build a project to deal with social media addiction, and Logoff was the byproduct of that. Really, it is a space and an epicenter where teens can come together. They can listen to each other's stories, experiences, and resources provided by each other. And then they can become empowered to have their own conversations, like Aliza said, to be able to do things like Dear Parents, to create those strategies and those statements and agreements in order to really normalize conversations regarding digital well-being and the need for healthier tech habits, specifically in Generation Z, and to spread those conversations to the local communities, like I did with Logoff in Birmingham. So the Character Ed is specifically one of those resources. And it's one way that we've really engaged in those interpersonal conversations in the classroom across the nation. So it is a guide that is an open resource, just like Aliza's Dear Parents. Does not necessarily have to be for the classroom, but a lot of teachers have been reaching out to us to implement this or to bring in one of the teen advocates to work through this with students. And it really is just a resource that was created by Logoff teens to help build healthier conversations regarding digital tech and health habits, largely through the amalgamation of very active, like Aliza said, the importance of activeness, active activities that are very interactive, and important information and statistics regarding social media's connection to mental health, to physical health, cyberbullying, important topics like that that are not necessarily brought up in conversations and in educational spaces, but are necessary to build the digital literacy that is going to be important in allowing generations to grow up having amplified, the positives of social media instead of really working with the harms. So as a movement in general, Logoff is really looking to further engage in those resources and the creation of spaces to have these interpersonal communication strategy sessions. So we hope that this can be an open resource to anyone who wants to engage with it. And another really helpful interpersonal strategy, which is, I was so thankful to connect with him. It is from Chris Flack from Unplug. And I won't go too in depth with it, but usually it is the strategy of creating these interpersonal digital contracts, specifically in the workplace. And it's kind of like what Aliza was hitting on with Dear Parents. It is incredibly imperative to have standards and to have rules set in place going forward to develop these healthier habits. So this is a technology agreement that I put together for fun, as if Aliza and I were to create one if we were in person largely, but it acts as a team's It acts as a space for teams and workplaces to really sit down and co-create and agree to standards of usage regarding social media and technology. I have created this mock guide that have kind of questions that we would ask, largely hyper-focusing on spaces where people are together, online meetings being very important now in this digital age when we're having more and more of them, in-person meetings, and then personal goals specifically for each individual. And then pledging at the end to all agree to those standards and those agreements. So one such kind of question would be, okay, in online meetings, do we want to have our camera on at all time? I'd say yes. Do we want to have our mic off? Do we want to do the hand raise feature? One thing that Chris Flack taught me about is the one screen rule. You can only have your computer open, only that tab. Your phone must be in another room, because that in and of itself is a distraction, just knowing that it's there. In-person meetings, are you going to have a phone there? What type of devices are allowed in the space? Again, working to mitigate as many distractions and that magnetic pull to your devices that really appears with social media and these addictive algorithms. And then setting personal goals, like what Aliza was stating with Dear Parents. How can you look to other colleagues, look to yourself and say, what are the standards that I want to follow? How can I make these goals, and how can I turn to the people around me to help stay accountable, or to just work with them to build these healthier habits? It's a super integral first step in kind of creating those habits and in integrating healthier conversations and practices in the workplace specifically.
And now on to our third part, which is advocacy, and stepping out a little bit beyond just ourselves and the people we're in immediate bubbles with. And I know this is one of Emma and mine's most exciting parts of our presentation.
Yes, so we really did want to talk with you about more about what we do and how we even got to have this conversation with you. Obviously, I worked on Logoff. Aliza has worked on Dear Parents, but where we kind of came together was for our love of youth storytelling and our anger around the lack of regulation in the digital well-being kind of arena. So we created Technically Politics as a result of that. And Technically Politics is a youth lobbying campaign that is dedicated to pushing forth regulation by uplifting youth stories. And we'll kind of go more into depth about how we do that, but that is us at our core. And right here is our website that we are going to hyperlink in the chat to allow you to have further engagement after the presentation.
So the need for Technically Politics stemmed out of this idea that there's very minimal regulation of big tech in the US government. And this makes sense on a timeline basis, that technology as we know it now is so new, and passing laws and regulation takes a very long time. And so this imbalance, however, is exacerbating the mental health issues of entire generations. And it's allowing for the space for online companies to have profit over people business models. And so instead of focusing on the well-being of their user base, they're focusing on the monetary benefits. And then this leads to the harm of young people who have still developing brains, and users' well-being has plummeted, as we've seen in the Mayo Clinic studies and various other studies, the Facebook files, and a lot of information that has been revealed of late, that generations are being harmed by the effects that these unregulated technologies are having. And so Emma earlier said that we met at a Center for Humane Tech Youth Leaders in the Digital Wellness Space meetup event around a year ago. And there we started this conversation around, why are the people who are making the laws that are going to affect how our generation and coming generations are able to be affected by technology, why are they not going to the young people who are currently living through this problem? And as people who have grown up in tandem with the evolution of technology, we have a much deeper sense of understanding of both the perils and promises, as the social dilemma says, of digital tech. And we know what's awesome about it. And we also know ways that it's harmed us, and tangible ways that we want to see the design and regulation of these platforms change. And so what Emma and I are trying to do throughout the Technically Politics movement is both humanize the data and the increased rates of mental health struggles by by compiling young people's testimonials. And so we're asking young people about their experiences with technology and ways that they want to see the design and regulation of these spaces change. And I have interviewed around 60 people so far, both in my hometown of Arlington, Mass, and on campus at Brown University. And it has just been so empowering and eye-opening to get to hear other people's experiences and get to be receiving this courageous vulnerability of talking about some of the really horrific things that technology has spurred in their lives, and countering that with but we have hope, and here we are willing to use our voices and share our stories to enact change, and to open other people's eyes up to the problems that we're experiencing with tech and the many possible solutions. And so from these video testimonials, Emma and I are creating episodes based on the issue that people discuss and also geographical regions, so that we can target local lawmakers with their constituencies and say, hey, here are the people who are voting, who will be voting for you. And if you don't listen to our requests and engage with us, you will be losing a lot of votes come election time. And then we will be embedding these episodes into an email campaign on our website and just increase public pressure on lawmakers from local to federal level by having young people, our allies, practitioners, organizations in this field, educators, send out emails. They can edit, we'll be able to edit the template so people are able to add their own personal story to lawmakers and say, this is a really big issue and people care about it and we need your eyes and your votes on it too. And then hopefully this will be moving young voices into policy spaces, which is the ultimate goal of Technically Politics, and to have lawmakers turn to us as the experts of our generation and as the experts of being young as technology is young and is growing so rapidly. And Emma, take it away with the ultimate success.
Of course, and to us, really, success is boiled down into passing the laws that protect young users from these digital technologies that can harm them. We really want to see a future where younger generations don't have to go through a lot of the harms that Gen Z really was faced with during this evolution and this rise in social media. We want those statistics to dwindle. We want to be able to say that we can exist in these online platforms and spaces in healthier ways. And how that is going to be done is by these pieces of legislation being passed, whether on the federal or local level. It could even be in like Alabama. We're tracking legislation in California right now. Neither of us are from California, but really just working to push legislation and to create that precedent.
And moving on to the conclusion of the Technically Politics movement, here are a few pictures that personalize our experience with this movement, and it's gained a lot of gravity in the past few months, and it has just been so wonderful and empowering to see the response that we're getting, both from people on our campuses and then from media outlets. You can see cameras in the back of two of our FaceTime and Zoom calls that are NPR and CBS coming to record our experiences working together. We've released podcast episodes, been featured in documentaries and articles, and then this more personal connection. And I've met so many people on Brown's campus through this initial conversation of what are your experiences with technology? And usually you enter the what's your major, where are you from, where do you live on campus? And this just opens up a whole nother door into the identities of people. And it's just so fascinating and heartwarming. And also being able to be connected with countless activists and organizations in this space. And there's just such wonderful sense of community here. And the irony lies in that so many of us have not met in person. Emma and I have been working together on this project for over a year and hop on our bi-weekly FaceTime calls and have never met in person. And so I think that really highlights this power of the digital world to do good and to allow for good. And our goal is to really just minimize the risks and the harms that it is so heavily perpetuating right now, especially for those users with younger brains. And Emma, if you want to share a little bit about our broader future vision for Technically Politics.
Of course so. And every single one of these pictures, there's one major thing that is similar. It's all happening on a college campus. And with that reality, what we want to see going into the future, obviously, Aliza and I are incredibly passionate about this. I want to go into a career of lobbying. So we understand that we have to kind of build a future plan and to ask ourselves, what is Technically Politics really going to look like in the future with that kind of metric of success being present? So In our ideal world, we want to stay on the campus. We want to go to high school campuses too. And we want to form Technically Politics chapters to be able to continue to create campaigns like this video editing campaign. We want to be able to go on to a next one. Maybe it could be a letter writing campaign. Maybe it could be in-person kind of collaborations. But we want to be able to have those hubs to have conversations, to work to push forth that mission of kind of getting youth stories and voices in the mix. So going into the future, we hope to have Technically Politics college campuses and high school campuses really circulating and to create that network, hopefully at UAB too.
And transitioning into some other organizations that Emma and I have had wonderful personal experience with and greatly encourage engagement from you all with. The first one near and dear to my heart, Fair Play for Kids. They used to be Campaign for Commercial-Free Childhood, and about a year ago changed their name to Fair Play. And this is a Boston-based organization that works to protect children's rights to a play-filled childhood. And so they're involved in lobbying work and in pushing for this kind of regulations, and also on more of the one-to-one connections. And so the Dear Parents resource was published through the Action Network, which is a component of Fair Play. And the Action Network offers work groups. And so people from a myriad of different backgrounds come and join in, people with similar backgrounds. So there's practitioners, there's early childhood educators, there's a cyberbullying work group, and there people from all around the world have found a virtual community of people who share their experiences and their passions and their desires for change, and are able to attend these monthly meetings and work for productive change. And Emma and I have had the pleasure of joining many of these different calls, and it's such a wonderful balance of this personal connection and also we are going to enact a change, and we have this agenda ahead of us, and we're going to talk about legislation that's happening and talk about the open letter we're sending to lawmakers and the ways that we're working on engaging our local communities as well as people on a national level. And it is just beyond empowering. And I think there's really a nook for anyone and everyone in Fair Play and Action Networks organizations. So we'll be linking those organizations and their work after the webinar as well.
And kind of moving on to, ironically, another Boston-based organization, Turning Life On. It is one of the coolest organizations that I've kind of run across, specifically because it is a great epicenter for resources and to learn more. I know that this group is probably extremely highly academic. So if you want to learn more about the topic at hand, highly suggest going to Turning Life On, engaging. They have, again, other groups and clubs and chapters that you can find, you can really find and connect with as adults, and just really to engage and immerse yourself in the digital well-being space. It's a great stop and to really stay at for a while to understand where you would best fit in this conversation. Another last kind of thing that I wanted to mention was the Birmingham City Council, or going to local legislators, or going to these local political hubs to push forth change. If you are also passionate like us in protecting children and in seeing those digital spaces really become strengthened and protected, you can do that. Anyone at any level can help us engage in this conversation. We're really looking for as many strong voices as possible. No matter if you are in Birmingham right now or if you are anywhere else, we would love to see you engage with your local community or engage with Technically Politics in the regard of pushing forth change. And we're going to send out a webinar resource guide. And I'm looking at it right now, and there's so many other resources and people to connect with. The Center for Humane, the New Public, Reset Tech, Parents Together, Accountable Tech, Half the Story, so many. And we hope that you engage with those, look at them, and hopefully you can find one that really fits, and maybe you can become more of a engaged digital wellness activist, because it definitely was a space that I did not assume I was going to get really involved in. But once you really see how open and warm the community is, it's hard to turn away, especially on a topic that is only growing in importance, as we can see from Biden making comments at the State of the Union about, the harms that social media can face and can cause young users. So it really is becoming a hot button issue, and we want to engage with as many people in it. So that is largely our presentation. Aliza?
Before we enter Q&A, I just want to apologize. People were putting things in the chat. I was just scrolling all the way to the bottom instead of reading them as they came in. So thank you so much to everyone who put their stories and their tips and experiences into the chat. We greatly appreciate that. And I've heard some wonderful things in here, less codependency, less flipping, agree with that, and ways to just focus on one platform at once, to not be dependent on social media. I know people have strategies of just deleting the app from their phones for periods of time. More intentionality sits at the core of so much of this work. And as Emma talked about, building in little buffers where you have a moment or two just to breathe and think about if you want to be opening this app, and it actually changes a lot of people's decisions, and they choose to go the route of actually exiting out of that tab or swiping out of that app, instead of falling down whatever rabbit hole may be at the other end. Deleting apps for weeks, I see that. Wonderful guesses of active and passive. So I'm sorry I missed those in live time, but thank you all so much for your engagement with that.
And same too, like less flipping, more ways to post once to a platform. That's such an acute and pertinent kind of struggle that a lot of teens and a lot of people are facing, because it's the addictive technologies that are wanting to pull you back in. So I would love to be of any assistance to anyone who wants more resources to put in those levels of friction between you and addictive technologies. I've worked extremely hard to do that for myself and the people and teens around me. So we would be incredibly happy to send out more resources to specifically target, that dependency and to kind of mitigate its harms.
And thank you so much for your time this evening. Emma and I so deeply appreciate it. And it's one of our favorite things to get to connect with people like this, because so often in our technically politics work, we feel as though we're having some kind of impact, but the real broad impact is going to take a lot of time and a lot more work. And so getting to know that we're here and you are on the other end receiving what we're talking about is just so wonderful. So really, thank you for your time. And Emma and I will link our contact information afterwards if anyone would like to reach out, as well as we've said before, a resource doc with resources we've mentioned in here and more extensive ones. And we open the floor up to Q&A.
Thank you so much. A wealth of information, great resources. And I find it fascinating because you can have people my age teach about screen time, social media, but your generation is the first one that's really, really affecting. You're the same age as my kids. And it's important to get that message now because you guys are on the front line. So I'm just going to throw this one out at both of you. So how much time during a day do each of you spend in front of a screen, on your phone?
Great question, Aliza. I can go first. An obscene amount, especially coming out of like a COVID environment at school. And it's been very difficult because I know for Aliza too, we both are not lovers of screens. Obviously, we want to get out. So making my time spent on screens more intentional, whether that be I'm doing homework, whether that is kind of, if I am scrolling through Instagram, I put on time limits for as long as I can be doing things that aren't work related. So for me, I have timers on my phone. I have an app called Moment that says, do you really want to be on your phone right now? And if I'm not on it for a school related activity, I exit out. So putting in those reminders really helps me take all of the screen time that I have and make sure that even if I am on the screen for many hours a day working on homework, that I'm consciously taking breaks, getting up, moving, and remembering to engage with the outside world, even if a lot of the work that I have to get done is based on screens. And Aliza, you can go off that too.
Being in college today, almost everything is online. And so I've been lucky enough to have all of my classes in person. But I had COVID a couple of weeks ago and the lectures are recorded. And so there's an hour-and-a-half lecture that you have to watch over Zoom. And I haven't had a paper worksheet in I don't know how long. And so there's a lot of times where in ways we are confined to our screens if we want to be participating in our classwork and getting grades. And then as for personal screen use, I don't have social media accounts. I don't have any social media apps on my phone. I go through little phases with photography, social media apps, and then if I notice myself spending too much time, I'll delete them. And so probably I spend between an hour and 2 a day either texting people or calling people or taking pictures. And same as Emma said, just really working on, do I want to be on my device in this moment? And if not, putting it away and we're not perfect. And so we've been working in this field for so long, and it's still a really big struggle a lot of the times. And sometimes I find myself falling down this rabbit hole. And then an hour or two have passed and I'm thinking, I had a whole essay to write, or I just missed dinner with friends. And so it's this work of constantly reevaluating your situation and just holding so much compassion and knowing that these apps, our digital devices, are designed to hook us in and keep us there. And so there's the work of legislation is to help prevent that, but right now we don't have that in place. And so we are entering this really unregulated digital realm, and it's not completely our fault if we lose control sometimes, and we always have the power to reevaluate, revisit the way we're interacting with technology.
Exactly. And I'm the same way. I have social media right now. So on the flip side, I have Instagram and I have Snapchat. And like as Aliza said, I struggle constantly with putting in those levels of friction. But for me, you know, when I weighed, do I want to be on these apps? Is it healthiest for me? I at first would just delete them and then I go back on them. And I realized that that wasn't a healthy habit for me. I had to learn and develop healthier habits and really stick to certain amount of screen time that I need to spend on apps. I needed to only follow people that I really cared about in order to create the healthiest and the best environment for me on these online platforms. Still takes time, still feel like Aliza said, but really thinking through and taking a moment to introspect regarding your screen time usage and what you gain from it and how you should tailor your experiences based on that can be extremely helpful in going forward and having those healthier habits.
So Aliza, since you're not on social media, do you feel disengaged?
Sometimes, yes. And not being on social media was a personal choice. And at the end of 7th grade, after much pushing, my parents finally caved and let me get Instagram. And in a little bit over a year, I had deleted it. And so there are so many pop culture references people say that go right over my head. And sometimes I'll miss out on the pictures people post on vacation. But for me, the benefits so outweigh the cons. And I know that I'm not part of this platform that when I had it as a 14-year-old was taking a really huge toll on my mental health and taking me out of the present. And so I work on just embodying that as a part of who I am. And this is my choice not to be on these platforms. And I understand it's going to have some drawbacks, but okay, tell me about this TikTok and show me this Instagram post. And so using that and kind of flipping the story and using that as a means to actually spur engagement and get to learn a little bit more about how other people are leading their lives. And so not the way I'm doing it is right, but it's right for me. And I'm willing to hear all of your stories as well. So it's definitely difficult sometimes. But I think it's such a fluid process, and this ability I'm going to temporarily delete all of my social media accounts for a month, see if it makes me feel better, take note of what I feel like I'm missing out on, and then weigh those and see, am I actually okay without it? Because I think for the most part, a lot of us are. So it's difficult, but for me, it's been really, really good.
So do you guys have a way that you can resist the urge to not spend so many hours on this thing? Because a lot of people, they just sit there, scroll away.
That's one thing that Aliza and I talk about extensively, especially because we're such academics and we're nerds when it comes to researching why exactly are we scrolling. And it is this gambling system. It's a slot machine that you're going to get a new piece of information that can make your day, something that can improve your mental well-being. You think that if you keep scrolling, then something will come. And that system really perpetuates this addiction and this dependency that a lot of people think creates a parasitic relationship with technology when it can be mutualistic. And how that can be mutualistic largely is through, I think, the implementation of self-standards and those like expectations and of other resources that I always say to put friction between you and the addictive technology. So whether that be setting screen time limits, whether that be before you go to sleep, getting the phone out of the bedroom and just getting an alarm clock, whether that is through kind of having specific zone and phone free areas and zones in your house. If you can put in those levels of friction slowly, I think it leads to your ability to adapt better screen time habits as a whole later on. And then for me specifically too, I do have apps like Moment, and I do use Apple kind of timers that really help me get off my phone, push it away. And then another really important application that I use that we've hyperlinked on the resource guide that I think is incredibly helpful for workplaces is called Freedom. It's an application that you put on your computer. You can click do your Freedom session, and then it blocks everything. It blocks it on my phone. It blocks everything on my computer. And then when people try to reach you via those platforms, or you try to get on Instagram, it will say you are now free from that distraction. And it's a really cool way to phrase, you know, getting off your phone as this freedom to engage in other areas, whether that is still on the screen, but you're still engaging in a more meaningful way. So there are so many different ways that you can do that. Those are the things that have worked for me and other teams that I've heard from Logoff. Aliza can go into other habits, but again, we'll put all of those resources in the guide so that people can kind of play around with what works best for them, because it really is this trial and error period.
I second everything Emma said, and then revisiting the interpersonal strategies of our presentation, having accountability partners. And back to Tripod has that baked into the system. So in the Dear Parents resource, you can add yourself and your partner or whoever else is helping in the parenting as an accountability partner, so you're not alone in it. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is a sense of community. And when I deleted Instagram, I did so with my best friend. And so I knew I was taking kind of a socially odd jump, but I had a buddy with me through it. And so whatever feelings were coming up, there was someone there who could empathize because they were doing the same thing. And so even if you're just studying or working, ask your colleague or ask your friend that you went to the library with, every 15 minutes, if you're not working, can you just check in with me and make sure that I'm focused? And then I think another thing that is so helpful is to build in breaks. And so it's different for every person. There's a Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. For me, I just like working until I notice myself getting distracted, and then I get up and do a couple of laps through the stats or go outside and breathe fresh air. And so I think we can get trapped into this kind of hamster wheel of, oh my gosh, I have to be working and working and working. And then when you stop working and you open up TikTok, it's so easy to just keep going. And so instead to say, okay, I'm working, but I'm looking forward to this break. So the more I get done right now, the sooner this break is going to feel like it comes up, and the more it's going to feel worthwhile. And so giving yourself that space of, like, we can't and we shouldn't be working all the time. And so building in breaks that feel a little bit more fulfilling than being on your phone, and those accountability partners again.
And so much you have said today has been related to directly teens, but so much is applicable to 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40s, and on and on and on. It's just a matter of how you view things. The last question that I'll throw at you before we let you guys go. So what's the plan for expansion of Technically Politics? Where's this going?
Great question. We hope very far. So as we showed with the quick wins page, we really have seen more and more people and organizations come to us ready and willing to engage in these conversations. And especially on the legislative front with the Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen, we have seen this huge push for companies to be accountable and to have these safer online communities. So what that looks like in the future is, one, we hope to really find those college campuses, those hubs to create that. Aliza and I can go into the nitty gritty of, we're currently in a coalition building phase where we are going to gain fiscal sponsorship, which will basically mean that we will be able to fundraise and be able to fund certain ventures, whether that be us going to DC to give talks, whether that is through building resources, expanding our team. We want to onboard more members specifically to work with coordination, lobbying. But in general, this is just going in a direction where we want to catalyze more conversations, and we really think those conversations are going to be based in these little communities and in local environments. So whether that is a club at UAB called Technically Politics, where kids can come together to engage around digital well-being and ways to kind of promote safer kind of digital spaces by pushing legislation in Alabama and on the federal level. We want those hubs to appear, and then that also will kind of create these better interpersonal strategies, because then you'll have a community of people that you can talk to about creating better digital habits. And you can have a cross-network kind of beautiful interaction with other digital advocates around the nation, because Aliza and I would have never met if it weren't for the Center for Humane. And we really want other teens to feel as though they have that connection with other teens, no matter where they are, have that connection with their local community, and have a say in the policies that are being developed for them. So that's kind of where we go in the next 3 to 4 years and beyond.
Absolutely. And just to add on to that, a lot of Emma and mine's conversations lately have been, how do we balance being full-time college students and also trying to engage in extracurriculars and in social lives and be starting a movement that we hope will change laws in our country? And thankfully, this summer we'll be interning with Accountable Tech, which is a wonderful organization and has been acting as our incubator. And so we'll work half on technically politics work and half on campaigns of Accountable Tech. And so this is going to be really exciting to have designated time where we don't have to worry about the impending test or essay deadline, and get to really dive into how we're going to more concretely roll out the carpet for these next steps, because right now Emma and I are definitely hyper-focused on compiling these videos into episodes and getting out this campaign as the moment is still ripe. And then we'll have more designated time to fully investing ourselves into technically politics without having to worry about all of the wonderful and chaotic things that occur on a college campus.
Mm-hmm.
Emma, Aliza, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your day, your busy collegiate schedules, to be with us and share your information.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
So welcome. And as a reminder to all of our guests, a recording of tonight's webinar will be made available online starting tomorrow. Be sure to join us for other upcoming webinars. On Wednesday, April 6th, discover how to best measure the quality of poems during Poetry as a Physical Act. This special Poetry Month webinar will feature Chris Pappas, a 2002 alum and co-founder of the U.S. Poetry Company. Then on Tuesday, April 12th, learn what your diet should look like in order to protect and maintain your cognitive function while reducing your stroke risk. Dr. Suzanne Judd, director of the Lister Hill Center for Health Policy, will be our featured guest during Diet and Brain Health. And on Thursday, May 19th, take part in Comedy Just Say Yes. During this webinar, we'll find out how we can develop our own happiness plan and learn why humor helps cope with stress with Dr. Kevin Fontaine, professor and chair for the School of Public Health. Register for these and other upcoming webinars online at alumni.uab.edu/events. Blaze your way with our 16th annual scholarship run presented by Viva Health. This year's run will be held Friday, April 22nd through Sunday, April 24th. It's your run, so support student scholarships by running wherever you'd like. Registration is only $35. Not only do you support students, you get a race, t-shirt, and finisher's medal. Find out more, including how to register, at alumni.uab.edu/5K10K. We'll be giving back to the UAB community on Saturday, April 9th. Join us as we volunteer on various indoor and outdoor projects at Glen Iris Elementary here in Birmingham. Registration is free, and we begin work at 8 a.m. If you're thinking about going to the spring game that day, no worries. We'll be done at noon, and we'll provide breakfast and lunch. Register at alumni.uab.edu/Unite Day. And let us help you get through your day or commute. Listen into the UAB Green and Told podcasts. New episodes are released every other week and feature members of the UAB community. Meet one of the first persons to put on a Blaze mascot, meet an Army general, and discover why alumni chose their career paths that they took. Download on Spotify and the Apple Podcast app, or visit our website. And be sure to stay on top of all things alumni on social media. You can look us up by searching UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On LinkedIn, search UAB Career Alumni Community. As we close tonight, be sure to give us feedback. The QR code on your screen will send you to a short survey, and I do mean short. I'll leave the slide up for a few moments so you have a chance to provide us with your feedback. Once again, thank you so much for tonight's guests being here, Emma Lembke and Aliza Kopans. Thanks for joining us. And as always, go Blazers.